Hello, everybody. Today I'm talking to Denise Allen, who is someone I suspect Andante travellers will remember well. I know Denise very well because I worked with her for a number of years at Andante when she was Director of Archaeology. However, she's also one of the UK's foremost experts on Roman glass and leads Andante trips to France, Africa, Sicily, Pompeii and Turkey. So it's a very wide experience of travelling in the Mediterranean. And to cap it all, she's recently been writing a much anticipated guide to Roman Britain and how to get there, how to find it. Let's see what she has to tell us. Hello, Denise.
Hello, good morning.
It's good to see you. These little talks sort of generally start at the beginning, so I think that's a good place to start. I always ask everybody, how did you decide that archaeology was for you? And was there a particular formative moment or some event that decided you that I want to be an archaeologist?
Well, I can't claim to have sort of grown up with archaeology, but my moment came the summer I left school, 1972, and a group of friends were going on a dig, so I thought I'd go along. And this was Jeff Wainwright's dig at Gussage All Saints in Dorset. So suddenly at the age of 18, I found myself in a field in Dorset with a lot of archaeologists, Jeff Wainwright's big excavations in those days, and a lifestyle that I had never dreamed of. And had a whale of a summer, and quite enjoyed the digging as well. So if I'm completely honest, I have to say that as so many people who have been on excavations will know, they have a special sort of magic and camaraderie and good time about them, as well as the physical exercise. So that first got me hooked. And I was due to go off to do something completely else at university, staggered through a couple of terms, wasn't particularly interested, and dropped out and became a digger for a few years, maintaining that nice lifestyle, and then went back to Cardiff to study archaeology. So yeah, that was my way in.
That would have been, if I remember right, Jeff Wainwright's Central Excavation Unit, the ultimate hairy diggers,
well, it was
in a
actually
way.
just before the Central Excavation Unit was set up. It was in the formative years of it. Yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, you sort of made a jump from that in the end to leading tours for Andante travels. And of course, you carry on doing so. How did you make that sort of leap from archaeologist specialist to travel expert?
Well, I think the first time it occurred to me that it would be quite nice to do that sort of thing, I was doing my PhD on Roman glass at Cardiff, and I was in Bill Manning's office, and at that time he was doing some cruises, as an archaeological expert, and he got a call while we were discussing my thesis to talk about his next cruise. And I just sat there thinking, I like people, I like archaeology, I like traveling. That could be quite nice. And then the opportunity arose because the Buckinghamshire Archaeological Society were organising some overseas travel, some tours, and I was asked to lead one. So I just said yes without having had any, and I don't think I was very good on that one, but I thought this is great. And then, of course, a little later on, I met Annabelle, who had set up Andante sort of by herself and was looking for other people to get involved. So it was a sort of series of steps. But the moment where I thought that's a good thing to be doing was in Bill Manning's office in Cardiff all those years ago.
I mean, I have to say, I found working for Andante very, very stimulating because it introduced me to so many sort of new, exciting themes and new places, and every archaeologist, I suppose, has a favourite place to visit, or more than one. You've had an enormous experience of the Mediterranean, and you'll have seen some of the most famous. Did you find that leading groups to these places allowed you to draw more out of them? In which ones keep drawing you back?
Yeah, well, the wonderful thing is that having the opportunity to go to all these places, you just keep putting together more bits of the jigsaw of how it all worked. So, to go to North Africa and to Sicily and to the south of France and to Turkey, that just this sort of overview of the well, the empire, the Roman Empire, and what came before that as well, gradually. And as you say, the opportunities at Andante were to go way beyond my comfort zone. So the Mediterranean, which is, culturally what I knew, but to suddenly be asked to go off and do a recce of Aboriginal rock art tour in Australia, or to Cambodia and Angkor Wat, and again you start to see the oneness of humanity, that although their civilizations are very different, it's because of the resources that they had at hand in those countries that they went in different directions, but all the same things motivate them, the desire for power, the desire to keep your family safe, to make a living, to work the land. Everybody had that in common. They just found different ways of doing it. So I'm so grateful to the amazing opportunities I got through Andante to see all that. But my favourites remain really the Mediterranean areas, Tunisia. Going through Libya was amazing, not possible at the moment. And Sicily and Turkey, fantastic sites. Yeah. So.
Yes, no, that idea of the great river of civilization, I utterly agree with you. Yes, interestingly, I found that Andante introduced me to that too, because I had the opportunity to go there and to do repeat visits to so many places I thought I knew well, and seeing them in a completely new light. That was always rather exciting. But of course, you were also you're a specialist in Roman glass, as I said at the beginning. I mean, that's an extraordinary material to be involved with. You go to museums, some of the most wonderful things we see in museums are these almost ephemeral, almost sort of fairy-like vessels on display in glass cabinets. Some of them with those wonderful colors, mosaic glasses, all sorts of things like that. Why Roman glass? What sort of got you into that?
Well, once again, when I was at Cardiff as an undergraduate, I needed a subject for an undergraduate dissertation, and there was some excavated glass from Gloucester, Berkeley Street in Gloucester, which they were looking for someone to do. So, and I thought, well, again, glass is a nice material. Several good things about glass. One is that you never get too much of it. Where at the end of an excavation, when the pottery goes off to the pottery person that stoned someone else, the glass comes in neat little boxes because so much of it was recycled. So you really get the bits that got away. And so it's much more manageable. You don't have to fill your house with, and as you say, it is a magical material. It's a sort of alchemy really, because the base things are sand and soda, freely available in various parts of the world, and putting those base materials together and coming up with this transparent, liquid, versatile material is a sort of alchemy, a sort of magic. And yes, so it's sort of kept my interest all these years, and I still get bits of glass sent to me here in Exeter. So yeah.
It's a funny thing, because I know that there are experimental glass makers in Britain who have worked in trying to reproduce some of the sort of forms and types of Roman glass, some of which are still those wonderful cage vessels, the amazing basket cage vessels, which are almost, we still don't really understand quite how they were manufactured. And they must have been the objects of particular status and importance. Have you worked with experimental glass making at all?
I have. I was incredibly fortunate where I lived in Hampshire, because just down the road, Mark Taylor and David Hill, who do, well, they started off as Roman glass makers. They've moved into Georgian as well as pre-Roman and other periods as well. But they were just down the road from me. So I've worked closely with them for years. And in fact, I went just about 10 days ago. Their studio is just off the A303 near Thruxton, where they've got a new wood-fired furnace set up in their grounds, and spent a wonderful day with them, just watching glass being blown. I've had a go at glass blowing with them and other manipulation over various times, but all that has done is to reinforce what a difficult thing it is. It looks so easy, but it's sort of perpetual motion. The minute you stop, it all sags off, or it goes too hard, or So it's like a sort of ballet to watch them making these vessels. And you mentioned cage cups, and actually there's a fantastic new book out on cage cups. The Corning Museum of Glass have produced one this year with all the known cage cups in it. And these
Wow.
friends, Mark Taylor and David Hill, have done some experiments. There's a chapter in there describing how we think it was done. And also, for the first time, I have only ever come across one tiny little fragment of a cage cup from Caerwent in South Wales, this funny little shaped bit of glass. And I kept thinking, I think that's a bit of a cage cup, which has been remodeled into a little gaming counter or something. And that's published for the first time in this book. So my one really close encounter with a bit of a cage cup that came in the usual grubby plastic bag from an excavation is in that book as well. So so work goes on all the time. Yeah,
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because I was really rather surprised, having been used to digging glass up on sites, knowing that it can be very delicate and friable, and is a particularly beautiful thing. And the fact that it was sold, broken glass was sold in vast quantities across the ancient Rome, the Roman world, certainly for recycling. And then to discover that, as far as we're aware, there are probably only 4 or 5 large kiln production centres that made all the glass that was then sort of sold in blocks or chunks to glass blowers around the Mediterranean, and then reworked it.
Yeah. Yes, well, this two-stage process does seem to be, so the making of the glass is one thing, the making of it from its raw ingredients in big tanks in the areas where this sort of material was available, you know, in Egypt and, you know, the Middle East. And then lots of little working furnaces where that broken glass, as you say, broken up into chunks and moved. Of course, shipwrecks have been found with these chunks of glass, cakes of glass, just broken vessel fragments on them as cargo. And then a lot of sites, John Shepherd, another Andante guide lecturer, has published a book on the Roman glassmakers of London with all the sites around London where the glass was being worked, not made from the raw ingredients, but being melted down and then made into the vessels and bits that were supplying a local market. So there are a lot of glass working sites, but far fewer glass making sites, as you say.
Just moving back to Andante for a second, it just occurs to me, of course, that one of the sites you must have been visiting more than almost any other is good old Pompeii.
Yes.
It's that wonderful collection of things on the Bay of Naples. I mean, how's that changed since you've been visiting it?
Different things are open and closed all the time. But as you know, just very recently, there's been a deterioration of some areas where bits have fallen down, and the restorations of the 1950s have not stood the test of time. And out of that, new things have come. So the sort of exhibitions that are put on in various parts of the site, the newly restored and exhibited houses are wonderful to behold. So it is a constantly changing feast, and well, up until our present crisis, when all workers had to stop, it was definitely an improvement every time. Of course, also increasing numbers at the site as well. So that's been something that the guide lecturers have all had to deal with, dealing with avoiding the crowds and taking the side streets and making your own route somehow. But I guess it's probably nearly deserted at the moment, isn't it? So
very much so, yes. I've seen photographs of the Forum and some of the major houses just empty of people. It's like a sort of post-apocalyptic Roman movie. It's really, really odd. I mean, you don't have to go to Pompeii, of course, to see Roman remains. We have spectacular Roman remains in Britain too, and you have, I believe, been working recently. Indeed, it's just about to appear, I think, on a new guide to the remains of Roman Britain. There hasn't been something like this done for a long time, since Roger Wilson's book back in the 1970s. So, I mean, tell us a bit about that.
Well, that again actually came about because of an Andante tour. Mike Bryan, my co-author, was a guest on a tour to Pompeii, and we were sitting at dinner one night, and he was the one who said, you know, there just isn't a guidebook to Roman Britain. I said, of course there's so much published about Roman Britain. He said, no, there isn't a guidebook, not since Roger Wilson's, which has been out of print and is now very out of date. And he had a background in marketing and obviously saw the gap and loved the Romans and had looked for the very book that we have now written, and it just wasn't there. So we decided to write it, and it's been wonderful just revisiting, or we decided we had to, between us, revisit all the sites. The criterion for appearing in the book is that there has to be something to see. So it's not all about Roman Britain, it's the visible and accessible remains of Roman Britain. So things on private lands that the public can't get access to are not in it. So it's what the ordinary visitor, without any prior preparation, except for perhaps checking the opening times on the internet, because they change all the time, particularly at the moment, can get access to. And it's everything from an inscription in a church in Cornwall. You know, there's a series of 3rd, early 4th century inscriptions down in Cornwall, to obviously wonderful Hadrian's Wall, the lovely you know, Lullingston Villa and Fishbourne and all the famous sites, to a bit of a Roman wall in a bookshop in Lincolnshire, in the basement. And you know, in quite a lot of Roman towns, you can go down in some of the shops and they'll let you see foundations and bits of hypocaust. So some are well known and you know, much visited, and others are fantastic and not much visited, bizarrely. You know, as you know well, Oliver, certain places get the tourists, and other places which are just as good don't. So, and we had a star rating system to tell you how much you would see when you got there. So it's not to do with, I mean, for example, Tintagel in Cornwall gets 1 star. Well, obviously it's a fantastic site, but what you see that's Roman is an inscription in a church, another inscription in a wall in the next village, and 1 or 2 pieces in the visitor centre. But the Romans were there and, you know, left that evidence. So so this star system sort of lets you know what to expect in terms of, I mean, obviously Fishbourne and Bignor and Brading, big villas, and, you know, they all get 5 stars. And we've also included museum displays.
That's a good
because,
idea, yes.
You know, I was often asked actually on tours where are the best places to see the Romans in museums and things. So this gives you that information as well, and directions to the sites. So, and it, as I say, it was just a fantastic. We didn't visit many. Well, I think we only visited 1 site together. We sort of went to different parts of the countries, and I loved writing these itineraries for myself. All those days at Andante where I'd get the little timetable, you know, with what I was going to do that morning, exactly like designing a tour, but just for me to go and visit. It was, yeah, it was obviously one of the aspects of Andante that I most enjoyed. So,
it sounds terribly exciting. I hate to admit it, that there are fairly major monuments in Roman Britain that I've never been to. I've never been to Hadrian's Wall, for example. Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it?
It is shocking. Well,
yes.
You've got no excuse now. You know where to find it now. You just have to read the book.
Denise, I noticed that our time is actually coming up. I fear the 20 minutes always passes far too quickly. I'd very much like to thank you for agreeing to talk with me and sharing your memories and thoughts. So it's been fascinating, and I certainly hope that you'll be leading trips and enthusing people about Gossamer in ancient glass in the future, and that they will be happily following you and your erudition. That's great. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure.